This is where things get interesting. Today we're talking about the Colorado Avalanche, because if you go over to their schedule so far, you'll note that they had a pretty rough start to the season. However, now they've kind of rebounded, they've won a few in a row, and they're in a position now where they're third in the Central Division. But when it comes to the Avalanche and their potential to repeat a Stanley Cup Finals appearance and potentially a Stanley Cup itself, you have yourselves conversations going around by NHL insiders suggesting whether or not a trade could be on the horizon when it comes to acquiring a second-line center. Nazem Kadri ain't here anymore, and the guy's doing pretty well in Calgary. I know because I have him on my fantasy team. So, when it comes to options that the Avalanche have in regards to who they could get to bolster up their team, the one name that I wanted to talk about was the big one right here. The guy who is second in the entire National Hockey League in goals behind Connor McDavid, Vancouver Canucks captain Bo Horvat. This is an article on The Athletic published by Pierre LeBrun just a few days ago. LeBrun, potential NHL trade candidates. O'Reilly, Horvat, and deadline buyers are emerging early. Published a few days ago on November 10th. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go ahead and read this yourself if you do have The Athletic. But if we go over onto Spectre's Hockey from earlier yesterday, this is the summary provided of the Athletic piece by LeBrun. Pierre LeBrun suggested Ryan O'Reilly would look good centering the Colorado Avalanche's second line. By the way, where have I heard that before? He also suggested Vancouver's Bo Horvat and Chicago's Jonathan Toews as other candidates for that role with the Avs if they become available in the trade market. Now, there are a few other tweets that I wanted to talk about as well that kind of highlight the same thing. Buck Foston went out there and wrote about the LeBrun article, saying, according to Pierre, he thinks the emerging reality is that unless the Canucks start resembling a playoff team very soon, it makes a whole lot more sense to feel the trade market for Horvat. He also says there's plenty interested in Horvat, especially if the Canucks are willing to eat some of his $5.5 million cap hit. LeBrun even mentions that non-playoff teams would be interested in him too. Now, the freaking reply here, the first one says, that's great news for the Connor Bedard hunt, and as we had talked about in the prior video on the channel going over Columbus, there are some teams that are really putting themselves in good positions to be bad and win Bedard. Obviously, I say that tongue-in-cheek because it's not like the Blue Jackets went out there and tried to intentionally get some of their guys injured, but for Bo Horvat, this could be a self-inflicted wound on the Vancouver Canucks should they decide to trade him away and put themselves in a position to do as well as they could be when it comes to that Connor Bedard sweepstakes. Bo is still second in the NHL in goals. He's got 12 goals this season behind Connor McDavid's 15 and above Andrei Svechnikov's 11. You still have everybody else out there, Tage Thompson, Carlson, Velarde, each with 10, and then you have even more names like Draisaitl, Pasternak, etc. with 9. Bo is on pace for 93 points this season and 70 goals. I don't know if he hits 70 goals, but that's the pace he is on. He's got 16 points, 12 goals in 14 games played. So for Bo, there definitely is a lot of desirability, I would feel. If any team went out there and saw his name displayed out there in the window of the trade market. And for good reason, too. I get it that with Bo Horvat's increasing production, there is so much that his agent has as bargaining power for negotiations heading into the next few months over here. Hey, my client has 12 goals in 14 games. My client is second in the NHL behind McDavid. If he finishes off with, let's say, 40, 45, 50 goals even, that 70-goal pace dwindles down to only 50, then he's got the ability to say, yeah, no, my guy did this in a free agent contract year. What are you going to do about it? For JT Miller, we had similar sentiments that his 99-point season was able to put him in a position to get the bag, but now for Bo, the Canucks are kind of in a pretty tightly strapped spot, and I don't think Bo has a guaranteed long-term future here just based off of how the team is performing and how they're going to have to shell out money if they re-sign Bo Horvat to an 8-year extension worth $8 million, because apparently that's how much he's going to be able to go for now because he's scoring so many goals, then who knows what the future of this Canucks cap structure looks like. But if you trade him away, you get worse, you lose more games, you get Bedard, whatever, and Bo Horvat goes to a team where he could actually exhibit some playoff success. You gotta remember, Bo's only exhibited, 4 playoff rounds with the Canucks, and 3 if you don't want to count the play-in series against the Wild in the bubble. Which brings us to Colorado. Nazem Kadri wasn't necessarily the most defensively responsible guy out there, but he was a pretty good offensive player that had some great playmaking and some goal scoring when you needed it from him. He also was a pest. As for Bo, and we had talked about this a few videos ago, he's not a two-way defensively responsible, penalty-killing capable guy. Sure, he's on the penalty kill, but the penalty kill sucks. Sure, he wins face-offs, but he's not really the best defensively. What Bo Horvat is more so of, especially this year, is a north-south sniper. That was the tweet that JD Burke had, and I do agree that it really does fit the style that Horvat plays more so than two-way defensively responsible beast does. He's a lot more of just a north-south sniper. He'll come down the wing, he'll snipe it, he'll be the bumper on the power play, he'll get those goals out in front, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, the guy's on pace for 70 goals, so I definitely don't want to say that he's a bad player, but for Colorado, if you're going to go out there and get this guy, maybe even at 50% retained, so that 5.5 AAV becomes, 2.75 AAV? If you're able to get a few months of that type of player, then hey, that would actually look really nice. I know Nazem Kadri is an irreplaceable player in some respect, but Bo Horvat would be a pretty nice follow-up. As for what the Colorado Avalanche could give up, I'd seen a lot of people on Canucks social media saying, hey, we want Newhook, we want a first in Newhook, we want this, we want that. I don't necessarily know how willing the Colorado Avalanche would be in departing with a guy like Alex Newhook, but I will say that the Avs do have a lot of draft picks that I do like, because guess what? This is a team that, even though they've gone out there and traded away a whole bunch of picks lately, because they're winning playoff rounds, I think it makes sense that they're doing that. There still are some guys that I do like that they have drafted over the years. Obviously, if Newhook is available, I would like to get that guy in return. There's Jean-Luc Foudy, whom I've been a big fan of. Justin Barron is no longer in the system. They traded him away to Montreal for Artturi Lehkonen. Oscar Olauson's a guy that I'm pretty okay with, and then, I mean, even Nils Åman. That was a guy that they drafted back in 2020. We all kind of know that he's been a pretty good player too, so I think realistically, Alex Newhook is the only one of significant value that would have more of a shot than not of being included in a conversation like this, because you know Bowen Byram is still there, but there's no way they're trading away Bowen Byram. I think if it's Newhook and a first, if the Canucks get offered that, they have to accept. Like, there's no way they say no. Please don't try to do the JT Miller thing where it's like, no, we're waiting for the package, the one trade package that is going to blow our minds. It's going to make the popcorn fly all over the place because we're going to jump up with excitement. Wait a minute, you offered us that? No way. There you go. We got to accept that now. Because of that type of attitude, the Vancouver Canucks ended up re-signing JT Miller to probably a pretty bad contract heading down the line, especially when you consider how poorly he's been performing this season. I know he's a point per game, but you can't tell me that JT Miller's been a good player this season. So for Bo, ultimately the best case scenario would be to do what the old Antoine Vermette did. Trade Bo away to a contender that realistically wouldn't be able to re-sign him, get a whole bunch of assets in return, have him win a Stanley Cup, and then re-sign Bo in the offseason. Pull off the old EA Sports franchise mode type of move there. It rarely happens in the NHL, but it does happen once in a while. Justin Braun did it this recent season too, except he didn't win the Stanley Cup with the Rangers. He was traded over from Philadelphia to New York, and then he re-signed in Philly, so it does happen once in a while. It's just for Bo, I mean, if he's getting like a $9 million AAV contract on the open market because the guy scores 50 goals for crying out loud, then yeah, I don't know if Vancouver's going to be able to afford that, but at the same time, I mean, Bo's always said he likes it in Vancouver, and he's a Vancouver guy now. His family, they're all here, so who knows if he'd be willing to take a discount or whatever. But either way, talk to the console your thoughts about the idea of Bo Horvat getting sent over to the Colorado Avalanche. Do you like the idea? If it's a Newhook, for example, coming back in return, do you have any other ideas about prospects or picks that could be included in this kind of trade? If you're an Avalanche fan, what are your thoughts of Bo Horvat coming onto your team? don't think about this guy as a two-way center that wins a lot of faceoffs. Sure, he does win faceoffs, but this guy's primarily a sniper now, and he's been that for the past, let's say, calendar year pretty much. So there's a lot more than meets the eye when it comes to Captain Bo and his statistical and player profile as of right now. But either way, talk to the comments your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 9, and bye.